Welcome to The Artist Matters. I'm Alex Rudy. Each episode features an artist sharing their creative journey, their origins, what inspires them, their process, and offering up a little inspiration, motivation, and advice to help you on your creative journey. Whether you're doing it for fun or looking to make a living, this show will help you on your journey and let the world know your art matters. Hey, one and all, welcome back to The Artist Matters. I'm your host, Alex Rudy. And it's time for another show. Hope the summer's treating you all well. Of course, the pandemic is making this the summer that wasn't, but we're finding ways to get along here. It is rather weird to be going to amusement parks with masks on. That is peculiar. And down here in the Florida area, it can be a little rough. If it's one of those hot and muggy days, it is incredibly rough. Can only do a few hours, if that. But anyway, it's great to be back here. And of course, I was having a little difficulty with becoming 50 years old. But you know what? There is a kind of freedom in that. For some reason, maybe this little feeling came over me with, I'm 50 now. There's crap I don't have to put up with anymore. I don't know if any of you felt that when you turned 50. Maybe it's just me, but it's kind of a liberating thing. I've been around for half a century now. I've been through stuff. I've done things. I've learned things. Still a work in progress. But there is some freedom in that. Hey, let me know if you felt that way after you've turned 50. Okay, so without further ado, let's go on to another guest that was referred to me by the one and only Lori Ann Davis. Thank you once again, Lori, for connecting me with Peter Freeman. Now, his speciality is the trombone. He'll go in to explain why that instrument was his instrument of choice and how it shaped his whole career. He is the principal trombone and president for the Massapequa Philharmonic Orchestra. He is also a member of the Nassau Pops Symphony Orchestra and has played with the South Shore Symphony and the Band of Long Island. In addition, Peter is a retired high school band director and administrator of fine and performing arts from Long Island. He is an alumnus of the one and only Penn State. While he was there, he was Baritone Horn Rank Leader for the Blue Band, principal trombone in the Penn State Symphony Orchestra and Wind Ensemble, and was the conductor of the basketball pep band, which I didn't know there was such a thing as a pep band for basketball. I guess there is. In addition to teaching, he was the president of Nassau County's Music Educators Association and the Nassau County Chapter of the New York State Council of Music Administrators. Yikes. There's so many positions he's gotten throughout his career. But at the heart of it all, it was to help music in schools, help the musicians, help them grow, help them learn, and provide the tools they need to succeed as musicians. And if that isn't enough, Peter is the founder and administrator for the Trombone Place. It's a Facebook group created to teach and motivate beginner through intermediate trombonists and their teachers. He also mentions a piece that's composed, it's called For Our Heroes. It's a musical piece designed to be performed live and completely socially distanced by musicians of all ages and ability levels. He'll explain what that's all about. And he's also a father of 2 trombonists, so it does run in the family. It was a very lively, eye-opening, and impressive interview I had with him. He's passionate about the arts in schools, and that's one of the most important things we need as we move forward here. Like many of my guests have said, we wouldn't exist without art. And he'll give his take on it. So without further ado, let's get into this and enjoy my chat with Peter Freeman. And let's welcome to the show, Peter Freeman. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks to Laurie once again for connecting us.
Yeah.
Glad you can make it. He has a varied bio, as I said in the opener, and let's delve into this because there's a lot here.
Sure.
Were you born on Long Island?
I was born in Queens, and then after a year of being there, we moved out to Levittown, and then I was there really until right after college. I left to go to Pennsylvania for 4 years for college. And then came back and lived in Farmingdale a little bit, and now I live in Malvern, which is also on Long Island, a little bit closer to New York City.
I had a friend that lived in Malvern. It's kind of like just the Nassau County border to Queens, yeah.
It's a square mile it's a town that honestly has no business being on Long Island. If a helicopter came, a gigantic helicopter, picked up the entire village and flew it up to New England someplace and dropped it down, except for the fact that we have New York accents, it would be perfect for someplace in Vermont or New Hampshire.
Yeah. Now that I think about that, yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So has music always been your creative outlet as far back as you can remember?
I think so. I think as a little kid it might have been more art. I might have been more doing things with drawing. But I realized in elementary school we were doing some sort of project where everybody had rhythm instruments, maracas and sticks and claves or whatever. And one person had to be the conductor of the song that we were playing. And every student would get up there with their baton and they would just conduct and point to different people at all different times whenever they felt like it. And I knew that I didn't know what a four-measure phrase was. I didn't know what that all meant, but I knew there's a certain time when you start and there was a certain time when you stop. So that was the first time that I kind of noticed that there's something here. And it's I don't know how it's going to be a part of my life. I just know that it's going to be a part of it.
And then, what drew you to, of all instruments, the trombone?
Right. It's fun. I started off on trumpet. Mm-hmm. And then after a year of trumpet, my band director said, we've got 10 trumpets and we don't have anybody on baritone horn or euphonium who wants to switch. And I thought, wow, I could be one of 10 or by myself. I was like, hey, I could be the only baritone horn player. Sign me up. And so that's what I did in elementary school. And I moved over to Division Avenue High School, which was grades 7 through 12 at the time. Wow. And in 7th grade, band director said, well, if you're going to play baritone, you should play trombone also. So I learned in 7th grade how to play just a simple scale on the trombone. And that's all I could play throughout 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, I was in the band room during one of my free periods because that's where I always spent my free periods. And the high school band director asked how my trombone playing was coming, so I thought I better take this out and try it. And he plopped the high school jazz band music in front of me. Mm. They only had 2 trombone players and needed a third. So I all of a sudden was in high school jazz band in 8th grade knowing how to play a B-flat scale. Wow. And that was kind of the beginning of it. I'll never forget the first rehearsal. The band director said to me after we were done, he's like, how'd it go? And I was like, well, the parts I didn't play, I got those right. The rest of it didn't quite happen. But yeah, that was the beginning. You have to, you have to not be afraid to be bad. Thank goodness I was young enough that I understood that lesson, that I need to get a little bit better on this. And And that's when I started to formulate the thought of no matter how good I ever get, I'm going to be a beginner because there's so much out there. Really just try and, today's Wednesday, just try and be better than I was on Tuesday. And then hopefully tomorrow I'll be better than I was today. And that's really been the way I've gone through the career and everything I've done, is just try to be a little bit better each day. And some days I succeed, and some days I think about days where I succeeded. So we don't say I fail. I just say, okay, that didn't quite happen today.
I always write this in my journal at the end of the day. What went right, and what could I have done differently?
Right.
Not what went wrong. What could I have done differently? That's a very similar thought. I like that. Absolutely. Was there any other musicians in the family?
No. My father said he played the radio. That was his joke. I was lucky that I had parents who they liked music, but they always encouraged me. But they grew up in households where it really didn't exist. My mother's house there was more art and photography and that type of stuff, and my father lived in it was like a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. So during the Depression, he was growing up. He didn't have the opportunity to get an instrument, nor would he have had a place to practice. But they loved it, and it was my father who really turned me on to it. He was I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and he gave me a record. For those of you young listeners, and it was a record of George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. Oh. And I did what any kid does when they get something from their parent and who says, hey, I think you're going to like this. I put it on a shelf. It was probably there for a good 2 years. Oh. And one rainy day I was doing something in the room, and I'm like, all right, let me try it. And so I put Rhapsody in Blue on, and I must have listened to it 5 times in a row. So that was the introduction to, I knew that there was something inside from the conducting. And when I heard Rhapsody in Blue, that just blew me away. No pun intended. It was really an exciting moment. I remember sitting there and listening to it. And still, I'll play it for students and say this, or anybody who says, oh, I don't like classical music, or I don't like this or that. But you know what? Listen to this. Mm-hmm. It's exciting. It gives you the feeling of being in a classical orchestra concert. It's not that long. If you're playing it really slowly, it's less than 20 minutes, as opposed to a symphony that could be up to 45 minutes. Wow. And if you're playing it quickly, it could be 10 minutes. So it's really the perfect piece to get started with, and that's how my father kind of turned me on to this.
And then you were drawn to the horns. Some people may be drawn to percussion instruments, woodwinds, but guitar. But what was it about the horn? The sound, or the way it looked? Really?
I could give you those answers that people listening would be inspired and go, wow, that's really incredible. And there's some of that is true. But the other parts that are true are my mother said, I don't want to hear a drum in the house. Oh, okay. And when I said I'm going to be playing violin, she said, I really don't want to hear you practicing violin. Why don't you stick with a horn, something like that. So there was that quiet encouragement that went through everything. So, and I'm kind of glad it did. I nothing against violin players or percussion players. They're incredible. Yeah. And I'm sure I would be very happy with that, but I'm thrilled to be a brass player.
So after high school, were you thinking of pursuing this as a career?
Sure. I had finally settled in my senior year on thinking that this is what I want to do. I had already gone through the past of the thoughts of being a lawyer and a journalist. And then the senior year, I was like, this is it. And my band director said, I think you're bit. And it was a pretty quick conversation. So